The morning rush was in full swing as employees hurried around the massive retail store. Customers moved between aisles, carts filled with items, while cashiers rang up purchases at lightning speed. Among them was Daniel Carter, dressed in a cheap polo shirt and worn-out jeans. His usual tailored suit was replaced with an employee uniform, complete with a name tag that read, Dan. But Daniel wasn't just another worker. He was the CEO. For years, he had built his retail empire from the ground up. But after hearing disturbing reports about how employees were being treated, he decided to see it for himself by going undercover as a new hire. He walked into the store, trying to blend in. But within minutes, he could already sense something was wrong. The store's supervisor, a man named Frank, barked orders at employees with zero patience. Workers were rushed, given no breaks, and anyone who asked questions was met with sarcasm or outright rudeness. Daniel took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay in character. He walked up to Frank and asked, "Excuse me, sir, could you show me where the inventory logs are?" "I'm new here." Frank rolled his eyes, barely looking at him. "Figure it out yourself. We don't have time to babysit." Daniel nodded, keeping his cool. But then, he noticed something even worse. A young employee, a teenager, no older than 17, was struggling to lift a heavy box. She winced, clearly in pain. Daniel immediately stepped forward to help, but just as he reached out to grab the box, a loud slap echoed through the store. Daniel's head snapped to the side, his cheek stinging from the impact. The store fell into complete silence. Everyone stared in shock as Frank stood there, hands still raised, his face twisted in rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Frank snapped. "You don't help her. You do what I tell you to do." Daniel's heart pounded. Frank had just slapped his own CEO, and he had no idea. But what Daniel did next would leave everyone in that store speechless. For a moment, the store was so silent, you could hear a pin drop. The other employees stood frozen, their faces filled with a mix of fear and disbelief. Daniel took a deep breath, steadying himself. His cheek still stung, but the real pain came from something else, the realization that this was how his workers were being treated every day. Frank crossed his arms, completely unfazed. "Are you deaf?" I said. "Get back to work." Daniel slowly turned back to him, his voice calm but sharp. "You just hit an employee." Frank scoffed. "Yeah? What are you going to do about it? Run to HR? Good luck with that. I run this store and I make the rules." Daniel clenched his fists, but before he could respond, the young worker he had tried to help, Maggie, spoke up, her voice shaky but determined. "You didn't have to hit him," she said, her eyes wet with unshed tears. "He was just trying to help me." Frank laughed, waving her off. "Oh, give me a break. You people are too soft these days. Back in my day, we toughened up and followed orders." Daniel's patience snapped. He straightened his posture, his entire demeanor shifting. Gone was the nervous, new employee. Now, he stood with the presence of a man who owned the entire company. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his real company ID, and slammed it onto the counter. The name on the card? Daniel Carter, CEO and founder. The room erupted into gasps. Frank's smirk vanished instantly. His face went from cocky arrogance to pure panic in a matter of seconds. Daniel locked eyes with him. "I don't work for you," he said coldly. "You work for me." Frank staggered back, his face drained of color. Employees whispered among themselves, their expressions shifting from fear to satisfaction. Because for the first time ever, Frank wasn't in control. And what happened next would change the store forever. Frank stammered, his confidence crumbling. "Wait, this is a joke, right? You're not actually—" Daniel cut him off, his voice deadly calm. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Frank gulped. Maggie and the other employees watched in stunned silence, waiting for what would happen next. Daniel turned to them. "Has he treated all of you like this?" he asked. Maggie nodded immediately. "He bullies us, yells at us, threatens to fire people for no reason. And if we complain, he says no one will believe us." Frank's eyes widened. That's "That's a lie," he sputtered. But another employee, Jason, spoke up. "No, it's not. He makes us work extra hours without pay. If we take a break, he says we're lazy. We're all scared of him." Daniel turned back to Frank, his voice low and final. "You're fired." Frank's entire body tensed. You can't fire me." Daniel stepped closer, towering over him. "I just did." The security team, already alerted, walked in at that moment. 2 officers grabbed Frank by the arms, escorting him out as he yelled and protested. The employees? They burst into applause. Maggie wiped her eyes, relief washing over her face. Daniel turned back to the team. "From now on, things will be different here. No more abuse, no more fear. If you work hard, you'll be respected. That's a promise." And at that moment, for the first time in a long time, the store felt like a place worth working in. But Daniel wasn't done yet. He had one more surprise. The next morning, Daniel called a company-wide meeting. Employees gathered, whispers filling the room. Then, Daniel stepped onto the stage, holding a stack of envelopes. "For too long, this store has been run by fear," he began. "That ends today." Then, he started calling names. One by one, employees stepped forward, each receiving an envelope. Inside, a bonus check. Compensation for every stolen hour, every moment they had been overworked and underpaid. Tears filled Maggie's eyes as she opened hers. Jason stared in disbelief. And for the first time, they felt seen. The store had a new future, because when their CEO walked in undercover, he didn't just fire a bully. He changed their lives forever. What would you have done if you were in Daniel's shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking stories like this.